You're watching Morning at NTV.
A very good morning once again. This is Morning at NTV. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and you can also watch this show on Twitter, by the way. You can follow the proceedings. We are posting some of the snippets from this show. Right about now, our next conversation, we are going to be talking about the inequalities in music. We are talking about copyright and the producers who are behind the biggest hits that you actually see on your televisions and hear on your radios. Right about now, I have three amazing people. I have Andrew Karamaji, that is a journalist with Daily Monitor called Arts and Culture. Yes, he's an arts and culture journalist. I also have Mr. Gilbert Agaba, the manager intellectual property at URSB, right there in the middle. And to the far left, I have Mr. Karamaji Kabito, the caretaker at UPRS. Thank you for coming, gentlemen. A very good morning.
Good morning.
Let me start with the main man, Mr. Gilbert Agaba, the manager in charge of intellectual property. So, we are talking about the producers who are being sidelined and the issue of copyright. Let's say a producer like Mr. Kagwa releases a song and doesn't register it under URSB for copyright. If I make a copy of that song, am I in the wrong?
Yes, of course you're in the wrong. Maybe for the start, you may wonder why URSB is here. URSB is a National Intellectual Property Office, so we are responsible for administering laws in respect of intellectual property, including copyright and neighboring rights. Copyright basically is a branch of law that protects artistic and literary works. So the music that we are talking about, books, films, computer databases, sculptures, photographs, this kind of thing is all protected by copyright.
Any creative piece?
Yes. So what Ms. Kagwa is going through is, of course, it's a problem and it's common in the music industry that the producer usually of a musical work rarely benefits, and it's usually the performer. So most people will know of Chameleon, but they will not know that most likely the song was produced by Kagwa. But what does the producer do? Usually the producer arranges the song and makes it palatable for us to consume. The way copyright works is that the person who's the author is the one who's protected. The author is the person who actually created that work or commissioned another person to do that work. So if I authorize Mr. Kagwa here to produce my work, he has a neighboring right, but the copyright in that work belongs to me who asked him to produce the music. That's why it is me who will benefit. But Mr. Kagwa will benefit from the relationship or the contract I have with him to produce that work. That's one area. The other aspect is that we have collecting societies, and you'll hear more about that. He has to join a collecting society because there are equitable remunerations that he is entitled to by law that Mr. Kagwa should gain from, because this work as it's being performed, there is an element of his creativity that is being celebrated out there, and that value should come back to him. But remember, he has already been paid by the owner, so what he receives is equitable remuneration. I know he is wondering now that I'm not going to give him. That is the ideal. That's the ideal how it actually works. But we can, if we can get more details from him to understand actually what is the relationship between him and the person who's claiming the copyright. That is what determines how he benefits from this work, because he could be a producer, but in actual fact, he's a copyright owner. He's the person actually who created this work. So he's no longer mere a producer, but he's an author of this work, and benefits to, he should benefit completely as the author.
What are the, okay, first speech in Kagwa.
Truth is, I find it quite very flawed, like that. Let's look at it from a journalism perspective. Like I work with very many other media houses that are not in Uganda, and they will facilitate you handsomely to create work for them. But then at the end of the day, they do not own all the rights to your work, because there was your brain to go and actually create this work, that even if they had facilitated someone else, probably that someone wouldn't have brought up the same story that I did. So, like, I find it so flawed when a payment from an artist, and when an artist pays me to actually create a song, it literally settles everything. Like, I find it quite flawed. I think that needs to change.
I'm not sure that that's the case all the time, and I do respect your views, of course. As a lawyer myself, I mean, I've handled consultancies where I do what I have to do, render my opinion, and that opinion is certified, and it is taken up in a report, and that report is not mine because I've paid. It's copywritten, taken. That's the understanding I have. So the detail is really in the contract and what you've signed for. It's what you've signed for.
Mr. Karamaji, as a lawyer, do you think this copyright law is strong enough to protect the producers or the artists, creative artists?
First of all, I don't think it's been tested enough, to be honest, to see how, where these weaknesses are. If anything, there is a major weakness in its enforcement. How many people really understand what copyright is anyway, from the point of view of the sensitization and understanding? How many people are paying royalties for the music we enjoy? In fact, our perception is that music is free. No one ever thinks that there is someone who needs to earn from this. We are really benefiting from somebody's work. Every time you go and get a stick with music and you pay that person a 70,000 and you put it of 100, whatever it is, that stick, and you put it in your car and you enjoy it, who have you really paid? Where does the artist come in this transaction? We don't think about this. And as humanity, you just think about it, just be fair. Is it really fair? No one thinks about it.
It's not fair at all. Mr. Gaba, we've seen one too many times, producers making music for the artist, but at the end of the day, the artist will rip big from that song, but still the producer will be poor. What are some of those loopholes in the copyright leading to this?
Actually, there are loopholes, in my opinion. They are not in the law, but in the appreciation of how the law works.
Help us break that down.
So, say Kagwa is hired by you to create a song for him. So you pay for his creativity. That's what actually you are paying for. Okay. The copyright is vested in you, and you are the person who owns the property of what has been created. Now, him, what he can get out of this service is the initial payment that he receives under the contract, but also he has the right to be recognized. It's called a moral right, that it must be attributed to him that it is Kagwa that created this kind of work. That will build his brand, that maybe he can, from a brand, charge more money. But in terms of the immediate relationship between him, you, who's a performer, who has hired him, you own the copyright. The only thing is that sometimes the contract is lopsided. That Kagwa gets 1 million shillings, you make 100. But that's not a problem of the copyright law. It's a problem of contract. How do I negotiate? How do I negotiate with this other person? But in law, actually, it's very clear. You own the copyright. He has been paid for that copyright. If you don't pay, obviously that's another issue. But he has been paid, and this copyright vests to him, even though he has used his mind. Remember, that's the value he brings.
Wow, these are new revelations, I'm telling you. People thought differently about the copyright law. Kagwa, if I hire you, if I hire you to make for me a song, I own 100% of the rights, and you don't. What do you make of that? Isn't that a recipe for disaster? Isn't that why producers are broke?
My problem with this is, at times it feels like people do not recognize the producer as an artist. But when you're in that studio, actually, the producer will play the keys. At times, he will go on and play the guitar, and that's art. This is more like a collaboration. Much as you paid me, this is more like a collaboration. Like, you bring something most of the times, I bring something. So when we finish this song and it all ends on the fact that you paid me my 100%, so I'm out of it, and you can go on and earn from this song, which probably I turned around from what you had initially brought in. Like, I still say it sounds very, very
Mr. Kavita, what do you mean? Is it
Again,
fair?
It's what you've negotiated for. The law is fine.
Wow.
Listen. You probably have your car, you probably have your land, and the law says you can sell it. what's the price? It doesn't, the law doesn't set the price. You do. It's for you to do that. So it's your bargaining position. If you're really good, why don't you negotiate better? That's the bottom line.
Can the copyright law compel these managers to at least give us some kind of a 50-50, 80-50? I don't know.
No,
like
no, no,
compel them to make contracts that are actually
your position could be
favoring
that, like,
producers.
your position could be, pay me upfront now, and I don't take the risk of how that song performs.
Because,
I
Mr.
would like
Karamaji,
to
the idea
understand
is,
that.
before you pitch in Kagwa, the idea is the artists are too broke and they are not in a position to negotiate better. They are willing to go with whatever is given to them. So, in my opinion and other artists, they believe the copyright law should be able to compel the managers to not, you know, take advantage of these artists because they are broke and
Who
desperate.
are then you talking about? Are you talking about the artist, the producer?
All of them. The fact that I'm selling a song means I do not have enough
So
funds.
who are you talking about? Is that the writer?
All the artists in the whole.
I
If
would
it's a
like to
literature
understand,
author who is going to
right.
sell their book, or if it's a music artist, or it's anyone, an artist.
You see, your arrangement could be that you retain the copyright. You keep the ownership. You keep the ownership. So in which case then, as an author or composer, you join then a CMO like UPRS, which unfortunately we do understand has its challenges now. But right now the regulator is working on its improvement significantly. I dare say in the next probably 6 to 12 months, you'll have a very, very changed institution.
And I've been hearing good things about UPRS. You're going to help us expound on that. Kagwa, you wanted to pitch in?
Yeah, at the beginning, you said some of the people protected the artist and the songwriter. And yes, truth is, at the moment, I don't know if there are very many songwriters that are protected, because still, just like producers, we have very many songwriters that are struggling, even when they've written very big songs, and the artists are...
Incidentally, UPRS has more registered songwriters, musical composers than any other. But I do acknowledge that your UPRS has had problems. We've done our studies. There are fundamental changes that are coming to change to address the issues.
But then I would like to understand, by the copyright laws or copyright, like, who is an artist? Is it just the person that sings? What about the person that comes and puts melody in your song? Like, that's
the
not
producer,
just
the
a
arranger.
the one that arranges,
Yes.
the one that creates melody. Like, are those considered artists by the copyright law?
If I may say, the law does not actually define artists. It has authors who own the copyright, and it also has those who own neighboring rights. So you have
Neighboring rights.
performers, broadcasters like NTV, and producers like you. All those
Come together.
own neighboring rights. So an author is the person who created the work, okay, or hired someone to create that work. So if I pay you, I know you're skilled, you can arrange this music for me. If I pay you, the law says I'm the author, okay? You will remain a producer. Remember that. So it's not that we are undermining your role. In terms of the law, that's how the relationship is defined. You can call yourself an artist, that's fine, because there's things that you bring to the table, but in terms of the law, that's how you are defined. Now, to emphasize the point, the issue is about how you negotiate this relationship between me and you, me the author and you the producer. Now, there are many things you could do. One, he mentioned it, that you can negotiate, but you maintain the copyright. So the arrangements and everything you bring to the table, you own them in this work. So this person will pay you a royalty every time the song is performed or somehow used, okay? But you have to also bear in mind how the industry actually operates. That's a limitation that you cannot regulate. People have to, the industry itself has to find a way to self-regulate. There are initiatives that we're putting in, like you heard from collecting societies. One of the ways is that ability to collectively bargain. They also have a responsibility to ensure that they teach you how to design contracts between you and the people you are dealing with. How should I design these contracts? By the way, every contract you enter into must be in writing. If it's not, it's in law what they call voidable, so it doesn't work. It must be in writing. The collection society should help you, teach you about these things so that you know, if I'm going out there to negotiate with so and so, what is my value? What do I bring to the table? And then charge for that value. Then you can, if you can't as an individual manage that, then have you considered having a collective way to bargain with these people that you are selling your work to? Because that will give you much more power, much more voice. But do not look at yourself that because I'm not recognized as an artist, maybe that's why I'm not making money. No, that's not the truth. The truth is that it's a matter of negotiating power. And you have to figure out a way how you can leverage on either your skill or your associations or something to enable you get the value that you deserve when you are negotiating with the person who's going to use your work.
Ms. Agaba, do artists have to register all their music independently if they have to prove that they own it?
By law, registration is proof. The law, however, does not make it mandatory. It's voluntary. The moment you create that work, you automatically, as long as that work is original, that means you did not copy anyone else. You automatically get copyright by law.
So it doesn't matter if I come to URSB to register?
It does matter, because how are you going to prove, for example, the CMO that you own this kind of work?
The original production is only the first step. Then the registration is the second step of ownership.
Yes.
So what parts of the song are being copyrighted?
The work that you've created, because we are not going to say this or that. What you bring and say, I own the copyright in this work, you own that work. Someone might say, but me, I did the arrangement. Then you'll have to determine how does this person relate with the person who's claiming the work. Are they joint authors? Okay, is he, was he paid for this service? All these kinds of things. But in fact, the law presumes that the person who comes and says they own this work is the copyright owner.
Understood, Mr. Agaba. You know, we had emphasized when this copyright law came in place that the people who are being marginalized, the producers, the people behind the scenes would actually benefit, but they are still poor. Does that mean that this law actually is weak and is not helping?
No.
No, it's the implementation.
It's the implementation.
Yes, it's partly an issue about sensitization and awareness from the people who should benefit.
So how best can we do that?
That's what I was interested in. Like, how best can it be implemented?
Exactly. There are many, obviously, platforms that at URSB in which we communicate to the public. For example, now I'm here talking about these things.
Indeed.
Kagwa is hearing about these things. We hold we use all manner of platforms to engage the public, especially the people who should benefit from the law. So we have held workshops. We've had appearances like on TV, we're on social media. You can visit us at our offices. We are available online at ursb.go.ug. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on WhatsApp. You can find us on Facebook and raise any query that you have about copyright. But obviously, most people, like you had, the attitude versus the country is that when I find music, I should consume. So I do not think about how does the person who created this work benefit. As a result, even when I'm communicating something about copyright, it just goes through one ear to the other until you really feel the pain of it.
Understood.
So what we did, one of the things we're doing is strengthening enforcement against copyright piracy, because that speaks volumes to the user, that is the public. Someone will say, oh, I didn't even know that just getting my music on this USB, I'm actually stealing if I do not pay the owner of the copyright.
Understood.
Does the public seem to mind that all?
Mind
that they are actually stealing?
They first have to know, because whereas the law does not condone ignorance, you can't say I didn't know, therefore I'm not liable. But the way we look at it is we want to build a relationship with our stakeholders, including the users. So one of the things we do is also engage the users and tell them about the copyright law, tell them about their obligations and responsibilities. They should pay for legally acquired works, and they should not turn this work that they've acquired into a business for themselves. This is a business of the copyright owner, is the one who owns the rights that are due to the copyright owner. So sensitization of the public is definitely key. People must know that we are doing wrong. If I'm making copies of videos, I'm stealing, I'm a thief. And how can I, however, get access to legitimate works? And that's where the CMO comes in.
Indeed. Mr. Karamagi, what are some of the loopholes derailing the implementation of this copyright law from being very, very effective like we would want it to be?
A lot of that comes, if I could talk about the CMO in particular.
Please go ahead.
UPRS. One, first is the undercapitalization of the CMO to perform its role. To a certain degree, lack of professionalism within the management of the institution itself. So you don't have a professionalized look at certain things, governance issues, management issues that came into the fore. And this really affected the performance, its delivery to its members, in terms of payment of royalties, collection from users, mobilization, and so on. So the first part is really to strengthen the CMO itself to perform its functions under the Act. Then it can deal with things like, sensitization of the public to understand this. URSB is a regulator, by the way, so it does what it can, but really the function lies with the CMO. The CMO should also mobilize its membership.
Indeed.
Right now we have a disgruntled membership with a membership of 3,000 and get a potential of 20,000. That should tell you there's a problem. The 3,000 want to leave. A good number of them are up in arms because there's a failure to perform. And so these are the things that have to be addressed to deal with professionalization of the CMO, institutionalization of its function, then it's able to deal. The artists themselves, incidentally, are also, I'm afraid, better be ready to professionalize. Yes, we have a sense of professionalization coming up. We see now what you'd call a career artist.
Yes.
A career musician. But we're going to have now for them to think deeply about having the right managers.
Indeed.
And now documentation, we're talking about creation of copyright by document. We have to have an agreement, and if it's not there, there are certain assumptions that are going to be made.
And that's why we've been having problems.
And this is where the problem is. So the next big thing, in my view, is among lawyers is going to be copyright.
Well put, Mr. Karamagi. There's also the issue where members of the artists, the creative artists, have been urged to join the UPRS. Yes. What kind of reprieve awaits them?
Reprieve?
Yes.
What do you mean reprieve?
Because they were like, if you need things for you, if you're an artist and you need things to work out for you, join the UPRS.
Yes. So what you talk about benefits? This is what you get if you join UPRS, the one that we're building. Number one, you have an institution that protects your rights. The functions of a CMO, CUPRS are literally, essentially four. One, to license users of your music, to monitor the usage of your music, to collect royalties from those users and distribute them.
Wow. That is amazing. Kagwa, is UPRS the future?
Yeah, I believe in what UPRS is doing, though.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My
Means a lot to the team.
Means a lot to the team.
Oh, here it comes.
At the moment, we are in a global village.
Yes. Indeed.
And the last time I was in Nairobi, I remember I was talking to their society, and they were telling me how they're in touch with UPRS. Like, I don't know if UPRS works with the one in Nigeria too, but like they are these
reciprocal arrangements.
Yes. And most of the times, I do not, either artists that are playing in those countries are not members, but there is a lot of Ugandan music playing elsewhere, and most of the times I keep asking myself, do they know that?
Can I explain that? UPRS has, operates in the territory of Uganda, so other countries have similar CMOs as well. So we have what we call reciprocal arrangements with those CMOs for them to police and do the same for artists there, and for us to do the same for there. So we have reciprocal arrangements with some of those countries. The problem is with law collections, we have not been paying enough to the house who haven't also been repeated. So they are also not remitting. That's why this thing has got to be redone.
Kabito Karamaji, the caretaker UPRS, thank you very much. I understand UPRS is the future when it comes to
Yes, it
copyright
is.
implementation and all that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And also we had Mr. Agaba Gilbert, the manager intellectual property, URSB. Thank you very much for putting all those details into perspective. You've been very helpful. People did not even know what the copyright law was all about. And Andrew, thank you for coming through.